Alrighty, so in this video, we're going to go and how do we make learn how to make this LED light. There's been some issues with this in the past, so I want to make sure we're all in the clear. I'm in Fusion. First thing I want to do is I want to make a square. That's going to be kind of like my frame of reference for how big my light is. Now I know on my 3D printing bed I have about 8 inches by 8 inches to play around with, but I want to have a little wiggle room to play with as I design it. So I'm going to make a 6 by 6 inch square. I know that if I make my picture around this size, that I'm going to be able to fit it on the 3D printer. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into Canvas. I'm going to insert a picture of this heart, and I'm going to insert it here. And now you'll see it's super small. And if I don't have that box there, I might be likely to just make a heart that's 1/4 of an inch. But now my 6 inch box allows me to kind of expand and move this heart so I know when I'm close to the size that I want. Again, I know I have a little wiggle room, so if I go a little bit too big, I'm okay, and we'll go there. All right. The nice thing too is now with that heart that size, I can actually go and delete that original square so I don't have to see it anymore. I'll create a new sketch, and now I'm going to trace this heart. And again, you can do it any way you want with the line tool or the spline tool. With heart, I like to do kind of a mix and match. Um, there we go. And then I'll spline it up. And you can do this a couple different ways as well, where you make a half of it and then you mirror it so that you know it's perfect. I'll just go all the way around. Why not? Again, in the spline, I can always come back later, make some adjustments. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, I'm just making a quick video. Please feel free to take your time. All right. Now I can actually go over here in the canvas and hide it, and I can see, okay, here's my heart. Looks pretty good. It'll work for what we need. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an extrusion of it. So I'm going to press extrude. But instead of using the normal extrude feature that we usually do, I'm going to use this thin extrude feature. And I'm going to just extrude that line. So I need to know exactly, I need to make it the depth to fit the LED light string, the neon light string. I also need to make the channel big enough to fit that nice and snug. So I'm going to make this 13 millimeters as my depth. And I'm going to make this 7 millimeters for the wall thickness. Now you might see some errors pop up. A couple things you may notice is that if I have tight corners and things like that, or I made an overly complicated design, this is really a good design for just simple things. If I didn't make this the right size to begin with, to 6 inches by 6 inches, if I have too many of these angles built in, then it's going to start running into itself as it extrudes. The computer's not going to like that, and it's going to kick you out. So you need these settings to be correct. And so if it's not, you can play around with the wall location. You see, I can push it from the inside to the outside. You can also center it on the line, but I'll put it on the outside. This is going to save us a little bit of hassle. And if you're having issues, excuse me, you may just have an issue where you have too complicated of a shape. There we go. So now you can see what I have. Next step is I want to shell this out to create a channel for the lights to go. So my shell tool's right here. It's under modify. So if you don't see it in your toolbar here, you can go find it underneath. I'm going to click on that face, and I want this to be 1 millimeter thickness. On the inside, press OK. Now I have a perfect shell or channel for those LED lights, which are 5 millimeters thick to fit in. Next thing I want to do is I just kind of want to make a little more oomph in the back. Just a 0.1 inches or like 2 millimeters, something like that is fine. And what that does is it just gives it a little more structure when I 3D print this. All right. So this is going to be the light. Um, Next thing I know, I need to build a stand. Well, I'm going to incorporate the stand into one design so I can print this as one piece and make it nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a sketch and I can look at where my planes are. And actually, this plane's going to work great for me. I'll come in here and make, again, maybe 6 inches by, I don't know, 1 inch or 1.5 inches is fine. Maybe I'll shrink that down a little bit. Now, I'm going to extrude this. I'm going to extrude it one way, which I know is 13 millimeters. Actually, I forgot I added those extra 2 millimeters, so I'm going to do it 15 millimeters. And you'll see that's flush. That's going to be important. The back has to be flush with my base. I'm going to do a two-sided extrusion, and I'm going to drag the other one out. Now it doesn't really matter. I'll do an inch, and I'll press OK. All right. So the reason I have it like this, I want this to print flat, so I don't need any supports. I can add this part in the front for stability. I can put my battery pack on the back for stability, but I need this to be top down flush. Now you'll notice this is not connected. Well, that's an easy fix. There's a couple ways to do it. One, I can just extrude this into there, right? And try to make that into there. It's okay if I intercept that little channel a tiny bit on that corner. The other thing I can do if I'm a little concerned about stability is I can make a small sketch on either side. It's hard to see what I'm doing from this angle. Right? And what I can do here is kind of extrude these in a little bit as well. Just to add a little extra stability. It looks like one side I didn't even connect really well. So I can clean that up a little bit as well. Make one side bigger. Again, it's not the cleanest thing. If you want to make a better way, you don't even really need this. I'm just doing this as a way to kind of make sure that this doesn't fall apart on us. All right. So next thing I have to consider is how am I going to get my wires through here? I'm going to make a small hole here. I'm going to cut that out. And then I'm also on the back going to create a channel. There's a couple ways that we could do this. Go all the way through. If I want to remove all supports, or if I want to hide it and add just a tiny bit of supports to my print, I can just do something like this. Now you're like, oh, that hole's not there. Well, I can go back to that original extrusion and now just make sure. And now if I look, I have a path. What I'm going to do with this little hole is slide my battery pack wires in, have that come through this hole, And now I can make that soldering connection joint between the LED light and the battery pack that has a switch on it. The only other thing I want to do to right now is just either chamfer or round this edge because this is kind of unnecessary and it's going to add print time. And now I have this light that's going to print pretty quick with a nice gap for the fill in this hole. Now, as this prints, this is such a small hole that it's really not going to need supports. It's going to be able to gap that. This little part here could add supports. It's also hidden in the back, so you're not going to see any errors that pop up with this with the 3D printing issues. But there you go. In the next video, I'll show you how to kind of set this up on the printer to make sure we're doing that correct there. Alrighty.